I have a comment. Maybe it's not so much a question, and this goes back to probably the Queen Bee comment that Judith made earlier. But I think that, as people ascend in the ranks and institutions, it becomes increasingly difficult, it seems, to hold on to both vulnerability and humility, authentic humility and vulnerability. And I think if you can do it and get to the point that you both have, you have a power that is really rattling me just listening to you speak. It's a power to open up your stories to a conversation, even when you're just talking, and to invite other people in and empower them at the same time. And so I just wanted to thank you for maintaining all of that with grace, humor, and that authentic humility and vulnerability, because it makes it so easy for everybody, no matter how different they are, to get on board and become part of the movement. So I don't know if that made sense, but thank you.
Thank you. Beautifully put. Thank you very much. You're bringing me, I feel verklempt. Lillian.
Hi. Okay, thank you. I don't know which way to turn. I'm so used to looking in all directions at once. Hi, I'm Lillian Waugh. I'd like to make one little historical correction. Okay.
Please.
There is a something that has always bothered me from the first time I saw it. The generic woman, the woman question. Like there's only one kind. But in the history of the town gown history here, there was a women's center, women's information center, out of a joint ministry, and that's where the Rape Crisis Center started from, and other things. So, but it is indicative, it's emblematic that if you use the word woman or women in a university setting with such an old established male, white, all male, all pale tradition, if you just use it once, everybody knows, oh, that's where you go for everything. Right. So the generic woman who is raised to not compete or excel or be in the public, but in crisis does everything. So we all understand that. Because of the wainscoting and everything in this building, I'm always reminded of going into an interview with a dean on this campus. And it took me 13 years after getting to this town to get into the Kevin's Women's Studies. And I knew that my reputation as that activist, add whatever you want in terms of dog collar, armaments, amazing height, by the way, 75 on June 1st, and 120 pounds. I've been working to get up there. That's what I was in junior high, so I'm back in junior high and starting life all over again. But I put on my drag. I was in perfect uniform to go into this interview. I knocked on the door. I was admitted. There was the dean was sitting behind a very big desk, and he was over 6 feet tall, weighed about 200 pounds, and he sort of shrinks into himself and says, "Oh, so you're Lillian Waugh." Well, what could I do? I channeled my grandmother, my Missouri grandmother. I walked back out, opened the door again, and said, "Shall we start again?" I didn't get the job. I made my point. So I'm interested in this. Harriet Lyon Day, I believe, was 1867, because that's one of my grandmother's birthdays. But to make it intergenerational in spades, it's got to be. Because if we don't transmit to the next generation, whether by blood relationship or whatever, we have the obligation, as one of my mother was raised in a Mennonite tradition, and she always said to me, if there are any children in the presence of you, when you're an adult, every adult in that room is responsible for the welfare of that child or those children. And substitute students, substitute victims of domestic violence, substitute need. So that's what I would ask you to do. But I must say, because I'm in a library, and my daughter is a librarian whose goal is to teach everyone to code. She's been doing a lot of keynoting, et cetera, et cetera. She was in Baltimore a year ago when the fires broke out and the tragedy, and she was doing a keynote in D.C. And she said, put her notes down, because this was all on coding, and she said, we can't talk about this yet. We have to talk about the circumstances behind something. Baltimore is burning. And then she turned it into a conversation on institutionalized inequities and barriers. And that is what the essence of this conversation is. How do you change institutions? You have to do it, or you are literally institutionalized in your own ghetto. So I thank you so much for this.
Thank you, Lily. Thank you very much. Thank you for adding that. And the correction, which I think is good. Other comments, suggestions? Yes, please.
Again, thank you both for your discussion, and I too am very inspired and getting a little verklempt at times. As I was listening to you speak, I couldn't help but think about in terms of your experience. A quote by Audre Lorde, and I'm getting the first part of it wrong, that famous poster where she says, when I speak truth to power, when I use my voice in the service of my vision, it becomes less and less important whether I'm afraid. And so I think about that in terms of your own experiences. And as someone who's teaching a women's studies class now, I see that sometimes in my own students, I want them to find their voice, and I want them to be able to speak their truth to power. And sometimes it's very difficult to get my students to actually find their voice. And I just wonder, for those who've been teaching, what were your strategies? How do you help them find a voice? When Gina spoke in class the other day, she asked a student a question, and the student responded, a wonderful student, I don't like to be called on. Remember this?
Yeah, oh, absolutely, yeah.
And so I said, oh, come on, you've got some great ideas. Any thoughts? Thank you.
And I think the business of finding our voices, and I thought that girl, young woman in that class put me in an interesting position, because she found enough of a voice to say, I don't like being called on. So I thought, okay, that's like, a woman saying, you want me to be, independent and speak up? I don't want to. Thank you. That's so it's legitimate. It's a legitimate thing. But I think that then, there were other young women from that class who came up to me and, said that they loved your class and how much they enjoyed the conversation. But I think that people understand, and clearly that's what Carol and Judith have made happen, and people understand when their voices are welcome. I mean, there are so many ways of making clear to people that not only are they speaking safely, but that people are eager to hear what needs to be said. And so that's why, reviving the voices of women who were just writing in their diaries 100 years ago or 150 years ago or 25 years ago, or that now we respect their voices, we hear them. Dead women have very loud voices. Dead women are littered through literature. They're all over the place. You can't walk through a book without stepping over a female corpse. They're all over these shelves. And so the idea that women's voices can be heard not only from the grave, but in rooms as we're able to speak is sort of a novel idea in itself. And that we want to capture those as much as possible is crucial. So I think one of the things that I do, I have good short-term memory. Within the first 10 days, I learn everybody's name, and I call on people. Like every student in my class knows he or she is going to speak in every class. I have up to 45 students in class. Everybody speaks every class. So there's nothing. And you heard me, I shut down their electronic devices. No electronic devices. I said, if you have a pacemaker or an ankle bracelet from your parole officer, you turn it off when you come into my classroom. So they learn each other's names, and they speak to each other by name. And it's forming that sense of community. So, and they're accountable to each other. So when they address each other, they have to address each other. But it's all about that formation of that sense of other people's stories being important and other people knowing that they're listening and paying attention. That seems to me to be one of the main issues that we're all making sure is there.
Two things that I found as a teacher
teacher, particularly in response to that question. One is, they're both hard actually. One is spending more time quiet, waiting for an answer. So the ability to be with silence in a teaching relationship, either in a conference or even in a classroom, sometimes works wonders. And the other thing is, this particularly I think in a teaching relationship, but it can work in other relationships, is insisting that people and oneself finish their sentences. What I have found, especially when people and myself are struggling with a difficult idea, that we change in the middle of the sentence or we silence. And I've so often been so pleased just saying to somebody, finish that thought first. And what comes next, I think, is reflection. What was I going to say? Maybe I don't want to say it, but maybe this is a safe place to say it. Or I didn't know I was going to say that. But that moment, and just notice even the next couple of hours, you know, when you talk and you start to say something, you say, but you know what, there's something there, that's something that somebody's been wanting to say for a while. And if they are in a safe place, or if you are in a safe place with yourself at that moment, it's amazing what gets said next.
Other questions, thoughts, stories? Yes, please, could you come up and get the mic? Thank you. Hi.
I'm Hannah. I'm an undergraduate. I guess it's just a question for educators in the room. So one thing I've noticed going through school is that, like, it's kind of discouraging, but a lot of people, especially women, like young women, being with the privilege they have of having education, and a lot of times, like, access to free education, they either don't realize that they have that or they do and they don't appreciate it, which is kind of sad to me, because I think, I put a high value on education, and I think, like, I don't know, it's just discouraging to me. So as educators, when you have students who don't really recognize that value, how do you approach that, and or maybe, like, what have been some experiences that you've had with that?
If I take that first, Hannah, would you mind? And I'll turn it over
That's-
to them. I think it's a great question, and I want to thank you for, first of all, being able to ask it, and to recognize that it is important. And again, one of the ways that you know education is important is you have to think about the people that tried to keep from getting it for so long. That's how you know something is important in a culture. They tried to keep women from getting it. They tried to keep people of color from getting it. They tried to keep, people of various sexual orientations from getting it. That must mean it's special. If you have to work this hard to get it, that means it's valuable. If they wanted to keep poor people from getting it, it had to really mean something. And so as a scholarship student myself, I really value the kids who know that, it took them 6 hours of working at Wendy's to pay for these classes. It took, this class. And if somebody else is sleeping in because they're going to 17-cent beer morning because it's St. Patrick's, they're in a different position than the rest of them. And the students who, it is true, yes, I know that's true. Yes, I was hearing the students last night discussing their plans for 17-cent beer day. But that you can't ever, in the same way that you can't convince anybody of something if they don't want to hear it, those students, the only thing you can do is some sort of evil laugh voice. You can go, you're not going to know until later what you've missed. And that leaves the resources open and your best teacher's times for you to be able to go and spend time with them and make sure that you're using all of the glorious resources that you have. But unless you're really good friends with somebody, as I did, I used to literally drag my roommate out of bed to come with me to class in the morning because she just couldn't bear to get up at 8 o'clock in the morning when it was 20 below. And I didn't care because she had to come with me to class and to make that happen. But you're absolutely right that there are people who don't get the value of what they're doing. And unless you're going to actually smack them upside the head, you're not going to change their minds. As a student, I think. unless by modeling your good behavior. But that's about it. But please, I'd love to hear better solutions.
Not better, but can I see can the person who asked that question just hi, thanks. So have you talked to some of the students who you feel have not been as excited by the opportunities? I mean, have you been rebuffed by other students in your quest?
Yeah, in some ways, and not just of young women, but also of like my male colleagues, like boys and girls both. Like, you know, they'll complain about class, and I understand. Like, you know, school can be very rigorous, and I understand the stress associated with that. But sometimes I'll mention something like, you know, like with the mind that you have, and like living just living in America. It's, I don't know, it's discouraging that because I think about like women in so many countries in the East. There's so many countries in the world. Like the ratio of women who don't have access to education, or just young people to the people who do, it's very disparate. So yeah, I've said some things, but usually I just get a whatever, like just trying to get.
Maybe you should major or minor in women's studies. No, maybe really. I mean, increase the pool of your friends,
Yeah.
because there are others looking for you, wanting to talk with you.
I'd like to join the Peace Corps to do
Wonderful.
advocacy for
Wonderful.
female education, for
Wonderful.
children's education, but I don't know exactly what I want to do. But yeah, it's hard to talk to people my age about these things because I don't know, they just want to brush off the idea.
Not all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, not
No,
all of
really.
them, that's right.
We're here,
Yeah.
and some of us old guys, you know, we will talk to you too.
I think I'm just person in the room.
No, really. Yeah.
Just once, you may disagree. I think what you've identified as well is not just a problem that is symptomatic among folks your own age, but it's endemic in America right now. I think, don't you think a lot of
Yeah.
ways we take a lot of things for granted, and so I think it is in some ways, particularly American disease.
Yeah, because I think like what comes with living in America, there's just like these instilled rights, and like people get this very like superior idea living in America, which it's think it's good to have pride in your nation, but like to a certain extent, I don't know. I see people walking around campus, and I even see professors, which is the worst part, who don't seem to have any interest at all in what they're doing sometimes, and so like those two things combined, like they're just
Don't give up.
yeah.
Don't give up.
No, I love school. I still go to
Good.
school and have fun.
Good.
Hannah, I call that sleepwalking.
Yeah.
I see it in people here in the library sometimes, and out on the street too. A lack of awareness of the world around us. And I looked up what you're talking about before I started the symposium, and there are between 63 million and 65 million girls who never get to go to school. And so around the world this is. That drove me to make this symposium happen, because it's a terrible reality, and it makes us know that we haven't gotten to equity yet. So don't get discouraged, because you'll find other people who have curiosity like you do, and you will get some assignments probably from educators that help you take yourself seriously in the work that they want you to do. This happened to me, sometimes in a serious assignment, helped me realize that I could do this and that I wanted to do it, and I did it. And so, you know, that'll happen for you if it hasn't happened already too.
The other thing that's hard to know is that,
The mic.
There we go.
but the other thing that's hard to know when you're a student is that there's a whole parallel world outside. I mean, if you think about being in school and you're a student, but when you get out into the world, there's a parallel situation where you're going to find people who are apathetic, people who are just treading water,
and then people that are really passionate. So I would say, I ask everybody you can, where are the best classes? Who is the best teacher you had? And get in those classes. You'll find people who are also interested in things very different than what you are, but maybe they're just kids or people who are passionate, whether it's a professor or the students. And if you find your passion and you pursue it, if you go into the Peace Corps, you'll be working alongside people with completely different knowledge bases, but they'll all have a passion for a certain kind of justice or, a certain sort of working on social issues. And then once you start finding your tribe people, your tribe, then it gets much, much easier. And it's never constant. It's always a matter of survival and having to go back out and reunite and go look for them again when you feel lonely. But, you're in control of it. So just follow your passion. Those people are going to start coming to you.
Maybe your books and remind your
Well, if you come for the new book, the hashtag is Tribe of Loud Smart Women. Thank you. So that's the tribe. That's the tribe. It's Loud Smart Women.
So, in the vein of honesty here, I'm Kelly Doyle, I'm 27, 175 pounds, and I'm the gender Wikipedian in residence for gender equity. And to Hannah's comment and to all of y'all, this has been absolutely an amazing experience for me. To all the women in the room, I realize I'm following in some pretty big footsteps here, and I appreciate the time to get to talk to all of you. And it's transformative in thinking about being honest and thinking about being brave. And I just wanted to say thank you, and that I appreciate that. And to Hannah, I too share your confusion and feeling of being upset or not understanding people in my cohort that are my age that aren't paying attention. And so I would invite you to, like everyone else said, to continue following your passion. And also, I know I spoke with Judith about this yesterday, but the work that I'm doing with Wikipedia is helping women who don't have access to education by us making Wikipedia better, which is an initiative that Carol wrote a grant for and innovated along with John Cawthorn, Dean of Libraries, is something that we're doing here. We're doing it first to allow women who don't have access to education or to books or to journals or to anything to be able to educate themselves. And maybe that's something that you could think about too, is alternative ways and communities you can get involved in internationally, electronically, of some like-minded people who are interested in the same things that you are. So don't lose hope.
Other questions, comments? Thank you, Hannah, for initiating that. Other questions, comments, ideas? All right.
Books again. There are books again.
And there are books again in the back. That's great. We can continue to the discussion afterwards.
While we're like this, I would like to recognize Jennifer Orlikoff, the Director of the Center for Women and Gender Studies.
Jennifer Olikoff, Director of the Center for Women's Studies.
And I think Jennifer has planned to share with you what comes next in programming for the
For the
celebration.
future.
For the future.
Come here, please take the mic.
First, let me say to Hannah, please come take some women's and gender studies classes. You will find passionate students. Sometimes we have to rein them in a little bit. Anyway, there are a lot of events coming up in 2016. The symposium kicked it off fabulously. This was wonderful. Thank you so much. This was really a great opportunity to learn so much about everything, and I really appreciate Gina Barreca coming. So, yes, big round of applause for everyone here. So, in celebration of Harriet Lyon's graduation in 1891, we have a year filled with events. As you saw, we started with this, and then the raising of the time capsule that was put in the ground in 1991 for the centenary celebration, and Lillian was a key part of that, and of course Judith was not just instrumental, but like magic. And so on April 5th, we'll be raising this time capsule out of the ground, and it will be in front of Woodburn Hall at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We have located 22 of the 25 keepers of the time capsule, thanks to everyone's assistance here. So we might reach out and say, here, do you know these 3 other people? So that, sit tight, we'll try to find them. We have Natalie Tennant coming to speak with us. She is one of the keepers, as she was the first mountaineer, first female mountaineer. I think her reign ended in 1990, so it was just before the capsule went in. And she is thrilled to come back up and talk, and she's really excited, so this is good. She also wants to do a proclamation, so we need to figure out what we want her to proclaim. I said, what does one put in a proclamation? She said, put anything you want. So let's put our heads together on that.
I think we probably have some thoughts on that.
Okay, good. And then, so we'll lift the time capsule. We'll have some folks speaking outside, and then we'll go into E. Moore Hall for the reception, where we will actually open it, because in case it's raining, I certainly don't want to open it and damage any goods inside. Then on April 7th, we will have, and President Gee will be speaking, Provost McConnell will speak. So we have a whole lineup, more guests to probably follow as well. We have to figure out the programming. Then April 7th, we will have a panel, mostly of students and graduate students, speaking on for whom should feminists vote. This was their idea. They asked us to put it together, so we reserved the room and got it ready to go. And then also on April 7th, and it's not on this calendar, I've got a calendar here of events, GEM will be sponsoring the Stand Against Violence March. It'll be from 8 to 10, beginning in front of the courthouse, old courthouse, and moving up to the Mountain Air Green. April 14th is our Honors and Awards. You're welcome to come and help us celebrate our students, but also combined with that will be the Capstone Symposium, or Capstone Colloquium, where they'll be presenting their capstone projects, and some of them are, actually all of them are really interesting, so do come and see that. And April 19th, which is a Tuesday, is the Women's and Gender Studies Fair from 3 to 6 in the Mountain Lair. We have over 350 students participating, presenting projects similar to those back there, but on a huge variety of topics. So we love people to come. And if you come, please engage with the presenters or the poster folks and ask them questions, because we're trying to train them to also be able to speak to use their voice to speak succinctly and say what they want to say. So that's pretty much spring semester. We're going to try to do some work modules with 4-H camps for the young women during the summertime. And then in the fall, we already have a few big things coming up. On October 5th, Charlotte Bunch will be in town. Charlotte Bunch was the woman behind the writing of the Declaration of the Human Rights of Women for the United Nations. And she was also the organizer of the Beijing Conference in 1985 on the human rights of women. So that was quite a coup to get her to come as well. I mean, I'm looking at this as big bookends. We got Gina Brecka on one and Charlotte Bunch. This is awesome. And then also, another great happenstance, the Mountaineer Week is going to be dedicated to women in Appalachia because of the 125th anniversary. So a lot of good stuff. And then the time capsule will go back in the ground then during that week, because they want to be able to promote it, to promote their events, but promote this event as well. Before it goes back in the ground, we have been tasked with adding items. So every 25 years, we're supposed to add items to the time capsule. So one of the things we're going to be doing this year is trying to gather information on what people want to add to the time capsule. So for instance, I need to go back to the Daily Athenaeum and get the article on Julia Amaro being the first woman SGA president. So how cool is that? I don't know why I didn't just grab that then. I just was, wow, this is great. So we need to keep those things in mind if you see things happening. So are there any questions? So I have a calendar of events here that I'm happy to share, and things will be added along the way. I'm just giving you the stuff that I'm fully aware of right now. So, are there any questions? Awesome. Well, thank you all, and I'll
If people
pass
want to
these
be on a
out.
mailing list,
Yes.
and if they're not, perhaps that's.
So, yes, if you're not on a mailing list, if you're not receiving things, let me know. I can capture your information, so. Excellent, thanks.
Once again, thank you to everybody. Can I get a big round of applause for everything, for a lovely place? Thank you so much. Books in the back. There are books in the back, which I'd be happy to
Get out your
sign.
checkbooks and credit cards.
I will
because
also
books
sign
are
Edith
for
Wharton's
sale.
books, William Faulkner's books. I'll sign any book. that's
And
in there.
everybody, don't let Hannah get out of this room without reading. I'm going to start right
Thank
now.
you so much.
Thank you.